situation was that working for Fiction House when I was doing comic books, I also was able to do some pulp illustrations. And since they had Planet Stories, I did an illustration for William Peacock, the editor. And the next issue, that was a quarterly, they had a family that they printed. And I can quote it for you verbatim. Who is this guy Anderson? He sure stinks.
Shelley, how about you?
Yeah, I got a call years ago from Jack Schiff. He says, "You want to look at this story? It was on loose leaf paper." And he says, "Some kid sent it in, or I don't know, but see what you think of it." So I looked at it, I read it, and I called him up. I said, "Jack, I think it's a good story." He says, "Do it." The fellow that wrote the story was Jim Shooter. And that was his first story that was published.
13 years of age.
Whatever he was, 13.
He not only wrote it, but
Yeah, he had that all marked out, how he wanted it.
whatever happened to that?
Next question.
I'd like to speak for Marty Nodell since he won't tell the story.
This is Mrs. Nodell.
Years ago, a cartoonist wrote to him, a gentleman who was very well known, Karl Barks, wrote to a young artist on how to get into comics. Marty Nodell does not remember the letter. He sent Karl Barks a letter in return, told him how to go about it, because Karl Barks was a little disenchanted with Disney at that time. Mr. Barks had lunch with Marty a few weeks ago, asked to have lunch with him, and thanked him for getting him started in comics.
Question. Addressed sort of to Julie, but anybody, we had Bill Finger's name come up. I was wondering if anyone could say anything about Gardner Fox, who we always thought was one of the great writers.
Yes, Gardner was a prolific writer, and I knew him from grammar school days, where I grew up with him. And he initially intended to become a lawyer, and he passed the bar test, but he still had the idea of writing. He loved to write. So when I first started my books, I thought of Gardner immediately because he had quite a flair for these various stories. And I asked him to do some for me, so that's how we started, I think, in the business. And he was an excellent writer. And yes, he could, yeah.
And he's up there.
Yeah.
Very important. If you wanted the story by Friday, he would be in on Friday. He was absolutely perfect in delivering scripts. He'd come in on time to the clock. And that is very important when you have a deadline to meet. So Gardner and I became very close socially. And I'm sorry to hear about his passing, but when you consider he did the original Flash and the Hawkman and Justice Society stories and innumerable other stories, a very dependable writer. That's very important.
Gardner Fox, aside from everything else, had a kind of purity about him, and he was one of the sweetest guys in the world. Absolutely. Easiest guy in the world to get along with. Not only that, but he had an involvement with his material, the pulp material, I would say an obsession, a fascination, and he really loved it. We used to exchange. At one point, I was hell-bent on collecting all of the early Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, and he had a portion of them that I hadn't run across, and we used to talk about him. He was a terrific guy, an absolutely terrific guy. Thank you.
for anyone who'd like to answer. There's a lot of criticism that is thrown at the comic industry in its current incarnation. Do you, any of you see anything good being done at the moment, whether in art or story or character or what have you? Anything you like?
I think actually there's an enormous change. It's like a sea change. I mean, I think that the world of comics has changed so incredibly in the last 5 years, it's almost unrecognizable. First, in terms of the production techniques, the range of techniques they can use in order to turn out books. Second of all, I've never seen, if you take all of the alternate publishers and their offerings and the mainline companies and their offerings, the gamut of material is simply incredible. I mean, there's satire, political satire, there's everything that you could possibly think of. And I don't think that this is any kind of a formative stage. I mean, this thing is sort of lurching towards a more formative stage with the need for, and ultimately I'm sure they'll find new areas of distribution. For the most part, about 4,000 or 5,000 comic book stores are handling everything, and if it wasn't for the fact that the comic books have become collectibles, we wouldn't have the kind of phenomenal involvement and interest that they have now. But if comic books were to reach Crown Books, Walton Books, and have rack space there, and in other words, be able to double and triple their circulation, I think the possibilities would simply be incredible. I think the one thing that's obvious now is, like everything else in our culture, the books are sort of young, they're sensational, they're the visual equivalent of a Schwarzenegger movie. I mean, it's part of the time. It's not part of what we used to do 5 or even 10 years ago. The books are explosive, and they have a kind of an energy that sometimes I think is just going to be squandered, because it's just, when you open up one of these books, the sense of having a hand grenade between the pages is very evident. But of course, the writing, it seems to me, has suffered enormously by these changes. But I don't think that it's as I say, it's a formative stage. I don't think that it's going to stop here. I think it'll roll on, and with the culture, we'll find a broader audience, and we'll find writers, for instance, in newspaper comic strips. The guys in comic books now make as more than the newspaper syndicate artists ever made. But the newspaper syndicate artists managed at different times in comics to do extraordinary material. I mean, it was very personal. It was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. It would be difficult to separate one character from another now, because essentially it's just the whole culture, talking, speaking, vomiting up, but it's really a situation, though, that with this enormous drive and vitality and everything else, with the increases in production techniques, individual publishers, I don't know what the circulation, the combined circulation of all the comic magazines are, but I'm positive it's the first time in close to 50 years that they're beginning to approach some of the old, numbers, and to have circulations for a magazine that sells 8 million copies or 6 million copies or 1 million copy. I mean, it's simply phenomenal. And when you think of the price, not 10 cents, but sometimes $10, $15, $35, it's a whole new ballgame. And as I say, the pattern hasn't been set. It's still looking for its more permanent mode, and it'll find it.
Planning to donate to libraries?
tax advantages. So, as soon as, sufficient money is involved, I think everybody can become current retired.
One interesting trend that, while we're talking about current trends that's been developing in recent years, has been the tendency of a lot of artists to write. Now, I know many of you up here have done it over the years. Gil Kane, Marty Nodell, Paul Norris, and others of you who, as far as I know, didn't write for comics, certainly had the ability and experience to do so. Now we see some artists who have been only drawing for a few months, and even though they quite frankly don't write very well, have been getting the right to do their own writing, and sometimes even write for stories they don't draw. I wondered what your opinion of that was, and what and how things have changed in that regard.
What's the question really, though?
How many of you who, those of you who started out as writers and as artists and did your own writing, felt about that, and how people like Shelley Bullock and Dick Sprang never wanted to do their own writing since they had done outside comics.
You called to mind a quote that I was rather amused to read recently in one of the great journals. Todd McFarlane saying, "I don't let the fact that I don't know how to write keep me from writing." And I think that's become the trend. I think he's very aware. I mean, it sounds rather simplistic, but I think he's very aware that it isn't his stories that are selling stuff. Neither is the stories in any case is selling any of them stuff. There are some cases where they do have writers. Bill Mesner-Loeb, very good writer, wrote an act, but I don't think his story sold it. I don't think that those things are effective. I don't think they're read, and I think you know that. They're just collected. That's the new phenomenon. We've got basically a subliterate market for the high-selling stuff. People who just look at pictures and are excited by the fight scenes. And the stories have to fill that kind of artistic needs. The stories just have to be simplistic, of good fighting evil, without the moral ramifications of what that even means being explained, as the classic stories did, where good and evil were clearly spelled out. Now they just give a guy a name that sounds evil. There is no storyline but fighting.
There's no real difference. They both use guns, they both kill.
No, there is a difference. The difference is that years ago, comics drawing was essentially diagramming and illuminating. In other words, the writer wrote the story and the artist was pushed into position. Now, the very good artists manage to have a quality which the artists today have to a great extent, and that is, they not only diagram the story, they dramatize the story. They not only dramatize the story, but they brought their own obsessions into the material. Now, the fact that McFarlane can't create a story or doesn't have a story that has any kind of a moral thrust or even a direction moving towards the end, the fact is that he manages to create something more than simply an illustration. He manages to create a dramatic situation with overtones of storyline sort of into the drawing. There's an inference in the drawing that is so bold, so brazen, so overwhelming, and it's the superhero material, for instance, most often moving into horror, but you can see it very directly. It's there in every page, even if the story doesn't seem to be built around that. There is something in the drawing now that supersedes all of the writing, and as a result, and the writing hasn't been much, and of course when McFarlane or somebody does it, he does it because he's an 800-pound gorilla, Well, whatever it is he wants to do, he's going to do. But the truth of the matter is that for the longest time, it's been moving towards a point where the Japanese influence of taking pages, designing pages brilliantly with layout, and has finally affected American cartoonists to the extent where the pages have never had the kind of dynamism and tension that they have today. It's more than simply, you know, as I say, an illustration or diagramming of the material, which it was for the longest time. These guys bring a quality that is part and parcel of the story itself. And that's why they're buying these artists, not because, in my view, he's a great artist, but you have to admit somehow that his work has an appeal for the reader that transcends just drawing. There is a drama, a quality of storytelling built into the drawing that is the basis for the appeal that all of these young cartoonists have. And on top of that, they have an energy, as I was talking about. You can't put aside the energy. The energy they have is simply incredible. These pages are so alive and so vital. It doesn't make any difference, you know, if they're extraordinarily well drawn. Actually, I think at a general level, their grasp of drawing and craftsmanship is better than it has been. They don't have the very top guys. They don't have people like Jack Kirby or like Alex Toth, people who absolutely dominated the field and who were so good, nobody competed with them. They just simply used to lead the field, you know, progressively wherever it was going. There's nobody like that, but there are a lot of competent people coming in with a feeling that's absolutely transposed to business, and it's a business that depends on the vitality, the youthfulness, the energy, the whole business of being young and listening to the music and wearing the clothes and being part of whatever this Greek culture is.
A little less academically, I mean, firstly, I must take exception to the one. I mean, there's no doubt that these pages explode with energy, but nobody ever exploded with more energy than Jack Kirby. I don't think they outdo Jack.
No, but at the same time, they acted exactly with his energy, what they're doing now.
Yeah, but
in the interim.
the point simply is that what we have here is energy which expresses emotion without intellect, without a message. It's purely emotional stuff. And I like to make the comparison, if I may, and I think it's a very apt one. The stuff today is rock and roll. Jack Kirby, Meskin was fine jazz with as much energy, but with some essence.
We're talking about the artist now. Again, I agree about the artist. The writing back in those days was as 10th rate as a lot of it is now. And the truth of the matter is that when an artist of enormous energy comes into the field, he transforms the field. And the field is affected by him. It happened by Louis Fine and Reed Crandall when they came into the field, and everybody was doing labored figure work, and these guys were simply extraordinary. Then when Jack came in, Jack was light years ahead of everybody else in his terms of he dominated. In fact, he changed the whole superhero picture from the time he got into it. And there's nobody, as a matter of fact, the stories that he and Stan wrote were jokes. I mean, there would be a collaboration with where Jack would make up virtually the entire story, bring it in pencil, and on the basis of Stan saying, let's do a story involving this or that character. And it was just nothing except the most brilliant fight scenes with a sense of momentum and excitement that up to 1961 or 62 were missing in the field for years. The DC led the field, but they had a staid look, very much like the New York Times, or as I said, some sort of a banking institution. It was all very professional, but it totally lacked the excitement and the color that Jack brought into it. When Jack came in, he swept everything with him. The whole field imitated Jack. Jack became the standard. It became the infusion of muscle and blood that this field was looking for. And I defy anybody to be able to pick out popular material that wasn't influenced by Jack for the next 20 years.